This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com, and I am live here with my weekly Wrestling Observer newsletter report from what I find interesting in the newsletter. There's a lot that I don't say in here because there's a lot that I quite frankly don't find interesting. And one note related to the Hannibal TV before I get started. I was supposed to do an interview with Terry Gordy's daughter, Miranda Gordy, this afternoon, but unfortunately she is having some issues with her Wi-Fi signal, so we're going to try and get it done next week instead because we do not want to do it with a choppy stream. There's some breaking news. WWE just reported on their website that they have come to terms on the release of the AOP. One of them was a former amateur wrestler. One of them was a former MMA fighter. I believe WWE hired them from basically scratch and trained them at the Performance Center. It's surprising that WWE is releasing them considering that they're basically WWE guys that they've taken from scratch, but at the same time, I think it's clear by now they're not going to be the next Stone Cold Steve Austins, but they were a lot better than the vast majority of the talent there, in my opinion. They were two of the better guys. I wouldn't have released them. I would have kept them, but that's just me. I'd release a guy like Adam Page long before I released the AOP because the AOP at least look like men. They look like people you wouldn't want to mess with if you ran into them on the street, where Adam Cole is a guy that you just walk right over if you ran into him in a dark alley. But mind you, he's playing his video games at night. He's not out there on the streets. There's lots of news this week regarding Brock Lesnar's contract situation in the Observer that I'll get into. Basically, their WWE's ability to license and merchandise Lesnar ended this week, which hasn't happened before. Usually they'll come to a new deal before they lose their ability to license his merchandise because they make a lot of money off of his merchandise, as he has been their most well-known active wrestler before his contract expires, because we know John Cena's been gone for a while now. Roman Reigns isn't the level of celebrity of a Brock Lesnar. I guess Roman Reigns will probably be the WWE's biggest star right now by far. There's no one really, really close. Lesnar would be worth a lot of money to ESPN, which has the pay-per-view rights of UFC. He also would be worth a lot to AEW. However, he would want a lot of money from AEW. Tony Khan has addressed Lesnar's free agent status, praising him, but he wouldn't comment on if any negotiations have happened yet. It would only make sense that Lesnar would at least hear what Tony Khan would have to offer, as Lesnar definitely would bring more eyes and more credibility to AEW's product. John Jones is moving up to heavyweight. Jones versus Lesnar is a fight that both Dana White said he'd be open to and John Jones would really want, with the winner possibly going on to face Stipe Miocic. But I don't think Lesnar's won an MMA fight since 2010. He had 2 first-round knockouts. His last fight was a no contest because he failed the drug test, and he wasn't able to finish Mark Hunt either, even on the whatever drugs he was taking. He likely would not win against Jones, but it would be a huge money fight. Meltzer speculates that fight would be worth probably $25 million to both Lesnar and Jones, respectively. But Lesnar's 43 now. Who knows if he's been training? He's not in the USADA drug testing pool either. But as I said, Dana White said he's interested in it. Scott Coker of Bellator also said he'd be interested in doing Lesnar versus Fedor in Bellator, but Lesnar might have some fights left on his UFC contract because of the last deal that Lesnar had with UFC before stating that he was done with MMA. So we'll see what happens with Lesnar. The most likely thing, and Meltzer says this, and I agree on it, he will probably get all of his offers together and use that as leverage to get an even better deal from WWE. He makes huge money for a very limited schedule with WWE, and he doesn't have to get beat up for real like he would in UFC. However, if Lesnar does have some competitive spirit, if he were to go to UFC, make the huge 25 million or so payday for fighting Jones, and in the slight chance that he beats Jones, that would make him huge. And Jones is like arguably one of the best fighter of all time. His only defeat was due to some illegal strikes, and it was like a disqualification defeat. So if Lesnar could beat Jones, that would be huge for him. So if he has competitive spirit left in him, maybe he would fight MMA. It is known that his wife, Sable, Rena Mero, or Rena, whatever the hell you want to call her, she apparently doesn't like him fighting, according to Meltzer. Dwayne Johnson came out this week saying his whole family had COVID, him, his wife, and 2 daughters. They all recovered. Kevin Nash followed that up, saying him and his wife and son had COVID as well. And AJ Styles also revealed he was one of the WWE stars that had it during the June outbreak. However, he only had mild symptoms, no fever, and supposedly his worst symptom was a headache. Now, it did come out that WWE wrestlers aren't supposed to talk about being positive for COVID-19, but AJ Styles is high enough in the rankings on the totem pole that they'll probably give him a pass on that. Roman Reigns turned heel, joined up with Paul Heyman, and then won the Universal title at the Payback pay-per-view. They should really stop having 2 champions in WWE. They cross over all the Raw and SmackDown and NXT anyways. But at least for Raw and SmackDown, I mean, why don't you just have one champion? It's not like you have two touring brands anymore. It just waters it down. Roman Reigns is far more known and far better a wrestler than Drew McDonald. Tyson Fury is doing some type of angle with Drew McDonald that could lead to a match at a future Saudi Arabia show or a WrestleMania. We saw that Tyson Fury already had that. I love Tyson Fury as a boxer, but that match against Braun Strowman from Saudi Arabia, the first time he wrestled, was brutal. Just absolutely brutal. Really don't want to see him wrestle again. And the build-up to it was also horrible. But Saudi Arabia has big money. There's also very little interest in wrestling these days, so they're looking for stuff to bring the fan attention in. Mauro Ranallo officially parted ways with WWE August 31st. He's no longer with the company. Paul Levesque this past week sold $2,410,160 worth of his WWE stock. Triple H also stated that the relaunch of NXT being taped from BT Studios in the UK, NXT UK, not NXT. It's going to start back September 17th in front of no fans. It's unlikely they're going to run at anywhere other than BT Studios in the UK because they weren't really profiting, according to reports, touring around. They stopped their house shows a long time ago, even before the lockdown. But Nigel McGuinness is being brought back as a commentator for NXT UK. He had been furloughed. Netflix's big show comedy show on Netflix has been canceled. It started off with some popularity, but apparently that faded away, and now they're canceling it because of bad viewership. Sami Zayn has returned to WWE after staying home due to COVID-19. He didn't want to put himself at risk. I've said this before. I lost all respect for that guy after he had the fan kicked out of a house show for offending him, even though he's a heel. I really miss the days where fans could go to shows and let out their inhibitions, and it was part of the heel's job to take. It was called heat. Back when wrestlers wrestled, now it's storytellers entertaining, and God forbid you offend one of these storytelling entertainers, even if you paid hundreds of dollars for a front row seat. These weak, thin-skinned heels are going to have you thrown out. Ric Flair stated to Wrestling Inc. that Charlotte Flair could very well be out a year related to her breast implant issue and I believe a shoulder problem as well. One of the most overrated people in wrestling ever, Gabe Sapolsky, who was part of the failed Evolved group that recently was bought by WWE. He now works full-time with NXT. They love hiring people from failed brands, WWE. So this guy from like a company that only had 33,000 subscribers on YouTube is now going to be helping create new stars. I don't think the Performance Center has actually turned out one new megastar. The last quote-unquote star, if you even want to consider Roman Reigns a megastar, he never reached John Cena's level. I don't have any issues with Roman Reigns, but he was from FCW, that development territory. John Cena was from Rick Bassman's UPW. Brock Lesnar was from Ohio Valley Wrestling. The Performance Center, as fancy as it is, has not turned out one megastar. And they mostly hire people with no wrestling experience. All the best stars came from the territory days, and in more recent years, guys like AJ Styles, who have been on the independents and TNA in Japan before signing with WWE. Although I don't put AJ Styles near Roman Reigns or John Cena or Brock Lesnar's level as a draw at all. Which, by the way, for anyone that doesn't know, I once pinned AJ Styles 2 times in one night when he was New Japan Pro Wrestling IWGP champion. And you can watch that match on YouTube. And that was only my 3rd match back after being off on a 3-year hiatus to take care of medical issues. Apparently, Thunder Rosa was invited for a WWE tryout as a referee in September 2019, but turned it down to focus on training for her Combate Americas MMA debut, which she lost. Wade Barrett is likely going to be Mauro Ranello's replacement on NXT. He had been working for the NWA, but they haven't done any tapings since around January 25th. Raw this week did a 0.58 rating. SmackDown did a 0.57 rating last Friday. NXT unopposed on Tuesday did a 0.26. AEW unopposed this week on Wednesday did a 0.36. I'll get into some fan questions when I'm done, but John Falsetta tipped me $5. He says hiring people from failed brands along with thin-skinned, weak storytellers is why WWE is in the toilet. Unwatchable trash. I agree. I fully agree. I could not watch anything from WWE. I used to actually, a couple months ago, I was watching like the 3-minute highlights of Raw and SmackDown on YouTube, but I've got to the point now where I can't even watch that. It's just absolute trash. And now Keith Lee is one of their new big stars on the main brand, a guy that was whining and bitching during the speaking out movement that a woman once tried to rape him. We're supposed to think this is a tough guy who's crying about a woman that tried to rape him. Give me a break. Not to mention he looks like a blimp. In other wrestling news, Rick Drayson passed away last Sunday. He had been having kidney problems as well as breathing and other health problems. He helped train Rusev as well as Jungle Boy. He was in the Incredible Hulk TV series. He did enhancement stuff for WWE, was a low-card wrestler for years, was on Blind Date. I remember him from that. He had a bodybuilding show. Good guy. We do have a second YouTube channel, by the way. It's under my Devin Nicholson name. And on that channel, I'm only posting my full interviews. They also go live there. So for the people that don't like my shoot clips, subscribe to that channel. I also do post some custom content on that channel. Former WWE wrestler Dan Rodheimer, I wrestled him before in Deep South Wrestling. He's running for the U.S. House of Representatives in Nevada and is considered a long shot. He's a bit of a flaky guy. I did ask him to appear on my show to talk about his run for the House of Representatives. After originally saying he would, he then stopped responding to me. So seems like a flaky guy. You would think someone running for the House of Representatives would want to go on a wrestling forum and appeal to wrestling fans, especially since there's been a lot of negative written about him due to some past assaults and so forth. But whatever, he changed his mind, I guess. In UFC news, their August 29th, last event of August, took place from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. Their prelims did a 0.19 rating, with the main card doing a 0.49 rating. So Raw and SmackDown still continuously beats UFC in the ratings. Dana White said they are looking at doing a George Masvidal versus Nate Diaz fight in the near future. Daniel Cormier is now 100% not going to need eye surgery for his torn cornea. Suffered in the third round of his August 15th fight with Stipe Miocic. I'll get into some of your questions. Todd's asking if I have an email address. If you email greatnorthwrestling@gmail.com, I'm not the only one that sees those messages, but if it's something that one of my webmasters feels I should see, they'll send it to me, or if I see it, I'll look at it. Unless it's something insulting, it'll usually get to me. greatnorthwrestling@gmail.com. Goonerman says hello. Someone says WWE effed up releasing AOP. Pliss Strong says. Mike says AOP was never on TV. I will say this about AOP. They had a lot of injuries. It seemed like they were very injury prone. Black Pill Jesus says WWE is so bad, I'd rather watch grass grow or paint dry than watch one of their shows. I would too, but the reason is it's because I actually get mad when I watch like WWE or AEW. Impact, I wouldn't even try to watch because I just get sad and angry about what wrestling has turned into, where if I'm watching paint dry, at least it's not going to upset me. Colonel Quayle likes my background. And by the way, speaking of Jesus that someone brought up, I reviewed some weed last night, actually, that someone sent me to try, as it is legal here in Canada. Crystal Gardens sent me to try. and somebody said you need Jesus in your life, get a life. Jesus drank wine. Weed is actually good for pain. It's good for relaxation. People go a lot less crazy on that than alcohol. So don't click on my my weed review videos if you have an issue. Someone says R.I.P. WWE. Mike hates Roman Reigns. Peter Birdsell also says R.I.P. WWE. Larry says, why is Roman Reigns Universal Champ? Bray deserves better. I don't know. I'm not really a fan of that stupid mask gimmick. Flex Cooper, tip me $10. Thank you very much, Flex Cooper. Sorry I missed this when it popped up earlier. Black Pill Jesus says, I always look pissed off. Oh, come on. Don't always. Maybe when I do this as a job. This is my job. Maybe talking about the current wrestling products doesn't exactly excite me. Carlos says there's only a small percentage of big men that work the indies. Speaking of one of the fantastic big men that work the indies, the Blood Hunter, managed by Kevin Sullivan. His valet is the super sexy Blaze. The Blood Hunters Forest of Fear match series is coming to the Hannibal TV this fall. And we do have some big men in Great North Wrestling. Nathan Banner, Max Testosterone, Wes Briscoe. That shirt's available on our Teespring site, though. The link is in the description and at thehannibaltv.com. We do have some great shirts, including a Blood Hunter shirt that Blaze is also on that you can get at thehannibaltv.com. Flex Phoenix or Felix Cooper wants to see Meltzer in a match. Mike, there's like 4 interviews with Bill Apter on here. He's his time has passed. His time has passed. He's stuck in the 80s and 90s. Nice guy, but I can't really respect people that are still find the current products interesting. JM, why do I hate Drew McDonald? I just think he's a terrible wrestler because first of all, as far as ability, look at the phantom kick he sold from Randy Orton last week, a kick that missed his head by a foot, going like that and flying backwards. You're not supposed to sell stuff that clearly misses you. And every interview he does, talking about storytelling, breaking kayfabe, talking about how it's a big family in the back. What a loser. I did an interview with the guy that directed I'd Like to Hurt People, the famous cult movie about the Sheik, last night, and I asked him flat out, did the Sheik ever hug anyone in the back after his match when you were doing all those Detroit shows, gathering footage for I Like to Hurt People? Did you ever see the Sheik hug people? No. You would never see a WWE Hall of Famer like the Sheik, one of the greatest heels of all time, most attacked wrestler of all time, say he hugged somebody after a match like, what's his name, Dominic Mysterio did, and Drew McDonald constantly reminding us that it's fake. I'd beat the living shit out of McDonald if I ever got him in the ring. Sam Lentz says Sami Zayn is a bitch. I agree. Huge bitch. Double S says I should review Vision Quest. I probably will. That's one of my favorite movies. I actually have the DVD of that, guys. Usually I've been reviewing tapes. A lot of people want me to review the original Wrestler too that Vern Gagne did with Billy Graham and Billy Robinson. The Lions Den Gaming says pro wrestling has become complete dog shit. I agree. Ralph Vaquero says all they have is nobodies. I agree. Randon S. Go To says Reigns, I consider the only star in WWE. I agree. Follow us on Instagram at The Hannibal TV. I do post videos on Instagram that are ad-free. As far as Thunder Rosa, Allen says she is not bad. Jefferson E. White says WWE is garbage. Mike Dess says the board members should make Stephanie McMahon step down. The reality is WWE is corporate. It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get more corporate. AJ Styles said in a recent interview, and I've already covered this, but I'll cover it again to drive it home, saying the fans couldn't accept an Attitude Era product. No, you guys just don't have the balls to do a product that might ruffle some feathers. You're a corporate company. Your product is corporate and bullshit. Mike thinks Keith Lee is a wannabe Mark Henry. He's a fatter, shorter, weaker version of Mark Henry. Jefferson E. White, I'm not going to say that. That's your opinion. Lots of comments on here. Walter Johnson thinks Lesnar's going to go to UFC for a big payday. We're going to see. Game over says RIP WWE 2021. Paul Perez says WWF, ECW, WCW. Though that was the best era. Well, I personally like the 80s era better than that, but that was a close second. Tyler Stevenson, would I wrestle Cody if hugging him after a match was a stipulation? No. I don't hug people after my matches. Could you guys have imagined any of the matches I had with Abdullah the Butcher, us hugging each other after? Just never would happen. JM says Keith Lee is a fat piece of shit. Funny. I'll end it at that. Have a great weekend. The Hannibal TV, Twitter, Instagram. I am at Devin Hannibal on Twitter. If you DM me, I'll follow you back. Have a great weekend. I'm getting ready to go.